Hey everyone, it's Andrew Warner, founder of mixergy.com, home of the ambitious upstart, and I'm going to tell you how I spent $1 million on furniture and ended up with just these two seats. In the early 90s, I was running a profitable business. We were doing several million a year in sales and in profits, and I said, I need an office space that will communicate to people that I'm finally important in the world. So my kid brother and I looked all around Manhattan, which is where our company was, and we found this floor of office space, beautiful, great, functional space in Manhattan, but it was a floor of office space in Manhattan. And if you know anything about Manhattan real estate, you know that's expensive. So you get an office space that's that expensive. What do? Well, you can't just put shoddy furniture in there. And we wouldn't do that either. So we went out and we bought furniture that was top of the line, spent $1 million on furniture. I remember telling the architect who architected our office, can you imagine we had an architect to architect the office? I told him, I need space that looks so good that people will forget how young I am. I mean, I was in my 20s. I wanted to communicate strength. Isn't the way to communicate strength to pay for office furniture, to pay for a big office that lets people know how important you are? Well, of course the answer is no, and when times got rough, I couldn't fill up my office space, and I ended up with not just a floor of office space, but a floor of office furniture that was way too expensive and couldn't be used. My CFO, I had a great chief financial officer at the time, found a way to not just sublet the office space, find a new tenant for it, but also found a customer for all the office furniture. And the day that we moved all the furniture out, he said, Andrew, it's all gone except for these two seats, the two that I showed you. And he said, I want you to keep these two seats as a reminder to never spend lavishly again. And I took them into my home in Manhattan, and they're the only furniture and pretty much the only things, except for my bike and these books back here, that I've kept over the years. And I kept them, and they're here in my house. I kept them for all these years as a reminder never to spend lavishly. Now, why am I telling you this? Because since selling the business, I've been giving speeches and talking to entrepreneurs and business people all over, and what they always want to know is, well, they want to know how to get funding, most important, and they often want to know how do you make profits in business. Kind of weird that they don't want profits first and funding second, but that's what they keep asking me about. And I gotta tell you that those are interesting subjects, but it's maybe more important to know how to cut back your costs, how to keep your costs in check, because if you don't know how to do that, all the funding in the world is just gonna get burned. And if you do know how to keep your costs down, well, you're gonna be able to run a lean operation, maybe not even need funding. So that's why I'm telling you this, and I've got to say that it's not just my own experience, but I pulled a handful of books from back there from the shelves, and you could see that the top entrepreneurs know this. This is Richard Branson. He, in order to get publicity for his company, instead of buying ads, he started doing balloon rides around the world and taking all kinds of risks with his life because, I believe partially, to keep his promotion costs low. This is one of my favorite entrepreneurs. You can't really tell on this cover, but this is Harry Helmsley, who graduated from school right in the Depression, realized that he couldn't buy buildings, but also was smart enough to realize that maybe instead of buying buildings the way he wanted to originally, if he managed buildings, he could keep his costs low. He wouldn't have to pay for the whole place and still get profits from the building, and if he knew how to keep his costs low, he could make incredible profits from the building. A lot of people think that he owned the Empire State Building, and he was happy to let them keep thinking that, but the truth is he actually had a management contract on the building, and he got that because he knew it was smarter to have the management contract. Of course, Warren Buffett, one of the richest people in the world, I think his license plate says thrifty, and in every book about him there are stories about how cheap he is. That's how proud he is of his cheapness. I went to one of his annual meetings where the jokes about how cheap Warren Buffett were flowing just as much as the financial conversation. Shows you how important Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway's company think that saving money and keeping costs low is. Finally, an extreme example, but an interesting entrepreneur too. This is J.P. Getty, one of the most, in fact, he was the richest man of his time, an oil man, and he was so proud of how cheap he was that he, at the end of the day, I think it's in this book where they talk about it, at the end of the day, he would write down everything that he spent money on, including the sandwich that he'd have for lunch. He would write it all down, including the oil rigs that he had for his building. That's how important saving money is in business. I forgot it at one point in my business career. I see a lot of entrepreneurs who seem to forget it, and I want to make sure to just keep reminding you that yes, profits are important, funding, it's also important, but keeping costs low might be just as important as both of those, and I want to keep emphasizing that, not just here, but in my interviews. And if you've been watching my interviews, you hear me ask people, where are you living? You hear me ask people, what are you spending money on? You hear me sometimes, because I do my interviews with video chat, you see me looking behind the person to see what their office space is like and to see how much money they spend on their office space, and there's a reason for it, because I think that it's just as important to find out about how they keep their costs low as it is to find out about what they're doing to grow their business. I'm Andrew Warner. Thanks for watching. Give me your feedback. Am I crazy on this, or do you agree with me? I'll see you in the comments.